Ballyclare District Historical Memorial Association. The 3 Scottish soldiers executed by the IRA. Since the Good Friday Agreement, there have been more veteran soldiers singled out for prosecution than IRA terrorists. The PSNI are investigating up to 1,000 veteran soldiers for manslaughter or murder. Soldiers carrying out their duty to protect us are now being hunted down because of terrorist fatalities. Terrorists who were armed with guns and bombs prepared to kill anyone in their way, and their families are screaming human rights violations, claiming they were killed unlawfully. A fully armed terrorist organisation cannot and should not be seen as anything other than cowardly murderers, and they should be punished for their crimes. The soldiers who were murdered by the IRA in some of the most horrific ways receive no justice, and their families are left with heartache and unanswered questions that the British government and Sinn Féin no doubt have the answers for. Answers that could help the families and surviving victims move on. It was on March the 10th, 1971, when 3 off-duty soldiers from the Royal Highland Fusiliers were found executed on the remote White Brae on the Laganeel Road, North Belfast. Fusilier John McCaig, aged only 17. His brother, Fusilier Joe McCaig, aged 18. And their friend, Fusilier Dougald McCaughey, aged 23. All had only been in Northern Ireland for a month, and were the first off-duty soldiers to be murdered by the IRA. An act so evil that the whole country screamed for justice and mourned the loss with Scotland. Both Catholic and Protestant communities shared the revulsion of such heinous and cowardly murders. Brothers John and Joe and friend Dougald were off duty and heading into town with friends and fellow Fusiliers Tommy Anderson, Charlie Robertson and Donny Leatham. Dougald's young brother David was on guard duty that day, so couldn't join them. When they reached the town, John, Joe and Dougald went to the post office to get some money out. The 3 boys arranged to meet back up with their friends in the bar. When the boys didn't return, Tommy, Charlie and Donny had a look for them, but they couldn't find them and just assumed they were on a pub crawl. There had been no threats to off-duty soldiers at this time, so there was no real concern or worry. The first sighting of the 3 young men was at 2:30 in the Abercorn bar. The next sighting of them was in Mooney's bar, and in Mooney's bar they were seen talking to 2 men. The description given of one of the men was that of Ardoyne IRA man Patrick McAdory. The last sighting of John, Joe and Dougald was in Kelly's cellars, where they were seen with 5 other men. One of these men was said to be ex-para turned IRA training commander Paddy O'Kane, who had served with the Parachute Regiment from 1957 until 1964. Sitting listening to this man's stories of his time in the army is probably a reason why the young soldiers may have felt comfortable in his company and safe enough to get into a car that Paddy had arranged to come pick them up. We can only assume the boys thought they were getting a lift back to the barracks. At 7:30 p.m, witnesses heard gunshots and seen cars speed away, and at 7:45, a young 14-year-old girl found their lifeless bodies. The gunmen had stopped at White Brae, and it's believed the young soldiers had got out to urinate, oblivious to what the terrorists had planned. The cowardly gunmen came up behind the young soldiers and shot them in the back of their heads. The 4 suspects in this investigation were Patrick McAdory, who was killed shortly after this in a gun battle with the security forces; Anthony Dutch Doherty, who admitted to the murders and named another assailant and was interned in prison. But he very shortly joined a jailbreak and escaped with an IRA inmate who was in for other offences. These two terrorists released a press conference organised by the IRA south of the border, and Doherty claimed the confession was beaten out of him during interrogation. A judge later claimed his confession inadmissible, and Doherty was a free man. Doherty was still wanted for questioning over the murders and for firearm offences, but the Irish government would not extradite him, claiming that the execution of the 3 soldiers was a political case. Harry Canavan, known as Suspect 2, went on the run shortly after the murders and was never captured. And Paddy O'Kane, known as Suspect 1, the ex-para turned IRA training officer, admitted to these executions, telling former IRA intelligence officer Kieran Conway what he had done, and in later years told his own sons about his part in the murders of the 3 Scottish soldiers. Paddy O'Kane was also the lead suspect in the Kingsmill massacre, one of the most brutal sectarian murders ever carried out during the conflict. In 2007, O'Kane was given an on-the-run letter, meaning he was not wanted by any police force in the United Kingdom. No one has ever been convicted for the murder of the 3 young soldiers, and our thoughts and prayers are with the families as they continue their fight for justice. In memory of Fusilier Dugald McCaughey, aged 23, Fusilier Joe McCaig, aged 18, Fusilier John McCaig, aged 17. Lest we forget. If you're enjoying our channel, please let us know by clicking on the like, share and subscribe icons below. And thank you for your continued support.